Okay, so good evening, everyone. Okay, there is a question. Capre Dame, Startup India Seed Fund Scheme Outlay. Kindly go through the budget outlay. You can find it there. I do not remember as it means. I don't remember right now, so I can't tell you the exact amount they have allocated. And when I will discuss this Startup India outlay, budget outlay, then I'll let you know. Right now, I'm not able to tell you because I do not have that eidetic memory. So I don't remember what they have given the outlay. But certainly means today or tomorrow we will discuss. Then I'll explain. And when I'm going to explain, it's not just the PDF reading. Okay, I will explain you the rationale behind, and I'll request to all of you to join that discussion properly because that discussion is also going to help you. Means when I'm going to discuss the budget outlay of this year, you should join this session. See, I'm going to discuss all the outlay. The PDF is going to be discussed or provided by everyone because that is provided by the government of India. I'm also going to use the same PDF, but when I will discuss, I will let you know what is the significance of that particular. For example, what he's asking is here is Startup India Seed Fund, right? So most of the people don't know what is the seed funding, right? And why seed funding is required, and why especially in the startup seed funding is required. Okay, so such kind of a thing, and where we can also apart from the startups, where we can also use this seed funding, and which sector have the most potential or require the seed fundings, right? For example, in agriculture sector, right? So agriculture sector, we have the if you will compare the three sectors, primary, we'll compare the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. The most of the startup only in the tertiary sector, they are technology based out startups. Then means tertiary sector, then secondary, and there are very few in the primary sector startup, right? So how the seed funding is going to help to establish the startup in general, and how this seed funding can help to the primary sector. All these things I am going to discuss when I will discuss this outlay, right? So in the last class we have discussed about various type of the procedure in the parliament regarding the budget. Before starting today's session and explaining few things, I have a question for you and you have to answer me this question. I'm going to write here on the screen. Question is, So question is, which of the following conditions most suitable for budget surplus? You have to answer this question. Which of the following condition is the most suitable condition for budget surplus? You have to answer this question, then I will proceed further. And all of you who are attending this session, kindly provide me the answer. Web was asking how to cover the budget in terms of descriptive answer writing. Wait for the next session. Wait for the next session. I will explain in detail. Means when I will explain this year's outlay is going to include what? This year's outlay, when I will discuss this year's outlay, definitely I am going to cover how means descriptive part of writing. So I have received 4 answers till then now. Everybody have to answer. It's a kind of very good question, right? So everybody have to answer. Till then now I have received 4 answers. Good evening, world. Answer the question which is on the screen. Question is, if you are not able to read, the question is, which of the following condition is most suitable condition for budgetary surplus? Option A, economic boom. Option 2, the takeoff stage of economy. Option 3 is natural or man-made disaster-like situation. Option number 4, no special condition is required for economic boom. You have to answer this question which is written on the screen. Apply your wisdom and answer. Come on, answer. If you will try, only then see. If you want to learn something, you have to try. If you will not try, then you cannot learn. So to learn and get selected, you have to start. Don't hesitate. Maximum what will happen? You are going to make it the wrong choice. So that is why I'm here to make you correct. Always remember, your best teacher is your last mistake. Shishnita saying option A. Venkat, answer. Good evening. Answer my question. I will wait for another minute. I need few more answers. Everybody is agreeing with option A. Most of the people are agreeing with option A. Anyone more else interested to answer? Okay. Last chance. B, takeoff stage. Okay. Anyone else? Fine. Answer is C. Neither A, not B. Answer is C. It is natural or man-made disaster-like situation. Then there is a highest possibility of having budgetary surplus, right? And I know that most of the people are going to take on option A, and I also know the reason, right? Because your flawed understanding about the deficit, right? Your flawed understanding about the deficit and surplus, right? In general, what we do understand from surplus is what we do understand from surplus is, if somebody have an income of how much, somebody have an income of 20,000 and his expenditure is 15,000. If you have an expenditure of income of 20,000 and you have an expenditure of 15,000, then you can say that you have surplus of 5,000, right? 5,000. You can say that you have a budgetary surplus, or you have a surplus which you can convert in the form of savings, right? Even for the firms also, group of individual, general perception is what? When we will have a surplus, means whatever our expenses are, that is already met and still we have some more money. That is why we have a surplus, right? So this is the common understanding about what? This is the common understanding about the surplus, and the same apply for the deficit, right? Same thing apply for the deficit. What applies for the deficit is, if I have an expenses of 20,000 and I have an income of 15,000, then I have a deficit of how much? I have a deficit of 5,000, right? But this simplistic explanation about surplus and deficit do not work in the case of governments, right? Government is here not to make profit or to have surplus. This is not the philosophy of the government. What is the philosophy of government? Spend as much as for welfare, that is socio economic welfare, right? As an individual, as a company, as an organization, maybe our philosophy is what? Maybe our philosophy is to make profit having a surplus. But being as a government, it's not a philosophy to have a surplus or to have some kind of what? Some money which we can hold and do not spend, right? So this philosophical thing keep in your mind. If you will going to have this philosophical thing in your mind, it is going to little bit easier for you to understand what are the circumstances which are suitable for budget surplus. Okay, just keep this thing in your mind when we are going to understand this budget surplus and deficit. Chances means probability, and all population efforts are concentrated for the economic boom, whereas the disaster, where the natural artificial probability is less as compared to efforts producing economic boom. When we say the economic boom, right? When we say the economic boom, it do not have any relation with the government's deficit or surplus. When we say economic boom, that is in terms of our GDP is rising, and it is rising with good rate, right? But maybe government has pulled down the taxes. So if government has pulled down the taxes, right, spending will be higher, more GDP will be there, but government income is going to be low for that economic boom period also. And the historical data are available where there was an economic boom, but government have only the moderate GDP, sorry, moderate revenue receipts, right? So it doesn't mean that even during the corona phase, the this GST collection during the corona phase and lockdown phase, our GST collection went down, but it was not uh, kind of what we have expected. Our this GST collection is going to be very down. It was not like that. So there are the two different factors, right? So if you want to understand, listen this entire discussion which we are going to have today very carefully. You will get what I mean to say for the surplus like situation and natural disaster like situation, why I have mentioned this thing, right? So this is the question. I just want to create a curiosity inside you so that you can pay more and more attention in today's lecture. That is why initially I have put the question. Generally when the classes are in the offline mode, I do put this question at the end of the discussion, right? But here the class is online. Maybe some people will lose attention during the lecture. That is why I have put this thing in the beginning. So I will come back to this question. I will come back to this question and I will explain why. I'm not going to explain. You are going to understood automatically, right? So let's begin with this chart and understand what. Sir, but how surplus is related to disaster? I will explain. Don't worry. I will explain. Don't worry. So when we say budget, okay, let's use the red pen. It is two part. One is receipts and other is expenditure, right? Receipts are divided into two parts: revenue receipts. In short, they are known as RR, and here is capital receipts. They are known as CR. Whereas similarly, expenditure is also revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. In short, this is RE and it is CE. We are going to use only these acronyms further, so you have to try to keep these acronyms in your mind. RR means revenue receipts, CR means capital receipts, RE means revenue expenditure, CE means capital expenditure. Now we have to see the budget situation. So there are kind of the three possibility in the budget situation. Number one possibility is was here we can write before going that total expenditure, that is TE, total expenditure, and that is going to be of revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. Similarly, total receipts are going to be TR and that is going to be RR, not Rajasthan Royals, revenue receipts and capital receipts. Fine. So now in budget, we have three possibilities. First possibility is what? TE is equal to TR. If this is the situation, then balance. If TE is greater than TR, then it is going to be what? Then it is going to be deficit. And if TE is less than TR, then it is going to be the curious case of surplus. Okay. Array, hold on. I will explain this thing. Just try to understand the basics, and I'm not going to explain even. You are automatically going to get my point. What I am trying to tell you with this question. Okay. Just focus on these things. Fine. So there is a three possibility in the budget. Either it is going to be balanced, or it is going to be in the deficit, or it is going to be in the surplus, right? Either it is deficit, surplus, or balanced. In general, government will go for either budget with deficit or budget with balance. If you can check the history of India's budget, you will find very few circumstances where surplus budget was presented, right? Surplus budget was presented, very few instances. Go back to 1950s and again 1962, 1965, right? So 1962, 1965, even in the year of 1968, 67, the surplus budget was presented, right? Why? I will come to that point. But in general, there is a tendency of presenting the balanced or deficit budget. Before going to discuss this thing, I just want to remind you a few things when I have discussed about revenue receipts. I told you revenue receipts, basic thing of revenue receipts is what? Basic thing about revenue receipts is it is comprised of what? It is comprised of tax receipts. What I told you about the revenue receipts. Revenue receipts basically shows what government is going to earn, right? Government is going to earn. So that is tax receipts and non-tax receipts. Whereas when we talk about the capital receipts, I told you when we talk about the capital receipts, the nature of capital receipts is what? Either it will create liabilities or decrease assets. Either it will create a liability or it will decrease the assets. Means what? If government is going to borrow, that is going to be the part of capital receipts. If government is going to sell their assets by selling their ownership in particular company, then it is also going to be the part of what? Capital receipts. Whereas apart from this liability and decrease of the assets, if we are going to get any money, means government is going to get any money which is not creating liability, neither decreasing the asset, automatically it will be the part of revenue receipts, right? And if it is a tax, then automatically it will go to the tax receipts. And if it is not tax, as well as it is not creating any liability, and it is neither creating the liability nor it is going to decrease the government assets, then it will come to the non-tax receipts. For example, dividends. So dividends paid by PSU, all PSUs, what the dividend they are paying, right? What the dividend they are paying, that is the part of non-tax receipts, right? Whereas if government is going to borrow some money, then it is going to be the part of what? Capital receipts. If government is going to sell its share in LIC, for example, the listing process of LIC is going to start very soon, right? Listing means what? Government is going to sell off some shareholding and government is going to offer those shareholding to public through the initial public offering, right? So by that process, government going to offload some of its shares in the Life Insurance Corporation of India, right? So that means government is going to lose some of its assets. Government will get the money, but government is going to lose some of its assets, right? So it will part of capital receipts. Okay, now my question is, before going to move forward, is it possible government can go for, like government is going for LIC, can government go for Indian Railways also? Is it possible? Is it possible, like LIC government is going to sell off their shares, is it possible for Indian Railways also? If no, then why? Prachi is saying no. Why no? Why government can't do that thing? Do government have, means government maybe not do that thing, but technically government has power, or means technically it is possible or not? Private is not allowed in some sectors. Private is not allowed in some sectors. Privatization is not allowed in certain sectors. In defense, a lot of private companies are participating. Lot of private companies are participating in the defense sector. Who told you it is not possible? And if you are saying about atomic energy, lot of, means Kudankulam project, most of the power plants, nuclear power plants in India, they are being established with the assistance of foreign countries, right? Now Kudankulam is also established with the help of Russia. Now the French company Areva is going to establish their nuclear power plant in Jaitapur, right? So it's not like that कि privatization is not allowed, right? It's not like that. Arey, FDI will be there only. Is Indian Railways is the company? Tell me first. Is Indian Railways a company? Is Indian Railways a company? Have you ever heard Indian Railways Private Limited or Public Limited, something like that? Ever you have heard? There is a Ministry of Railways. Number one, listen very carefully. Railway itself is not a company. However, to run their operations effectively, railway have certain other PSUs like IRCTC. Railway itself is not a company. Railway for their operation take the assistance or take services of various companies. Right. For example, to book the ticket in the railway is providing that services through IRCTC. So IRCTC was created as a company to provide reservation facility to the people of India. Earlier, when the IRCTC was not there, then that reservation was done through railway counter itself, right? The railway counter itself. Even if you want to avoid those charges applied by IRCTC, you can go to that railway reservation counter, right? So there will be the difference in the fee. What fee they are charging as an Indian railway, right? What fee they are charging as an Indian railway at the counter, and what fee they are charging through the IRCTC, you will find some differences. Okay, so Indian Railway itself is not a company. Okay, Indian Railway have number of companies. For example, Concor. So there are many companies. Rights. They are companies who provide assistance or the vendor services to the Indian Railways. Right. So in order to make companies provide the shareholding, first government of India have to create an Indian Railway as a company, right? So once it is going to be created as a company, only then you can do that thing. Fine. So government can sell the shareholding of a company, not a ministry, right? Not a ministry. So if government want to go for the privatization or provide the shareholding of the railways, then they have to do what? They have to first create a company. 100% government hold company. Point clear? Okay. So if this thing is clear for your understanding, I am just giving you an example. Suppose that total expenditure is 400, right? Total expenditure is 400 and total receipts is 380. So our budget is in deficit. Why it is deficit? Because total expenditure is greater than total receipts. Okay, so that is why our budget in deficit. And how we can define the budget deficit? This budget deficit is equal to total expenditure minus total receipts. Okay, in short, BD is equal to total expenditure minus total receipts. Fine. Now we are here going to break it down, the total expenditure, because we know that total expenditure is comprised of revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So out of 400, revenue expenditure, suppose that is 250 and capital expenditure is 150. Okay. And when we broke down this revenue receipt, means total receipts, we found that revenue receipts is of how much? Revenue receipts is of 280, whereas or 200. Revenue receipts of 200 and capital receipts of 180, right? 180. So this is the further categorization of receipts and expenditure, right? So we can see that our budget deficit is coming only 20, right? But when we have expended our capital receipts, I told you in capital receipts it is comprised of either liabilities or decrease in assets, right? So suppose that out of this 180, out of this 180 liability, we can say it borrowings. Out of 180, borrowing is 100. So what I told you, our total expenditure is 400, our total revenue receipts is 380, and out of total expenditure, revenue expenditure is 250, capital expenditure is 150, that is 400, right? Now revenue receipts are what? Revenue receipts are of 200, capital receipts are of 180. And out of this 180, 100 rupees or 100 is coming through what? 100 is coming to borrowings, right? So when we find out the budget deficit, it is showing 20 only, but it is showing 20 only when we have included the borrowings in our receipts. We have included borrowings in our receipts. Even after including the borrowings, still we have 20 deficit, right? So we planned that okay, 100 rupees we will borrow from here and there, still we are able to see that there is a deficit of 20, right, despite having the borrowing. So what we can do, we can simply increase the borrowing to 120. If we will increase the borrowing from 100 to 120, this budget deficit is going to be what? Zero. This budget deficit is going to be what? Zero or not? Tell me. Got this point? How you can make this budget deficit zero? Very easily. So it's very easy to make budget deficit zero. And even what you can do, just make it 130 and you will be having the surplus of 10. What you just have to do, increase the borrowing. Increase the borrowing. Right? Increase the borrowing and your budget is going to be what? In surplus. But question is, to what extent we have to go for borrowings, right? To what extent, or even the better suitable word, why we have to borrow? Why we have to borrow? So from here, whatever I am going to say, keep each and every word in your mind very carefully, right? Very carefully, because it's an not offline class, I'm not able to see you, right? So that's why I'm saying please keep each and every word in your mind very carefully. When I will say I want to borrow, I want to borrow, right? So first case is what? It's very simple. I have some unavoidable needs which I am not able to fulfill with my earnings. Whatever earning I do have, that earning are not sufficient to fulfill my requirement. That's why I'm borrowing, right? Other thing is, with these borrowings, I am going to I am going to invest. I am going to invest, and through that investment, whatever the profit will come, I will first pay my principal amount plus interest amount. So whatever I am going to, even I cannot say the profit, I will say through this investment, whatever the receipts, I am going to invest that money which I am going to take from the point of view of borrowing, right? And after doing that investment, whatever the returns will come, I will use that returns first to repay my debt, which is comprised of principal amount and interest amount, right? So these are the two possible scenarios when people will borrow, or any company will borrow, or any government will borrow. Whether it is Indian government or US government, everyone can borrow, right? Now, since Keynesian revolution, it was John Maynard Keynes who suggested that government must have to spend as a public expenditure. If government will go for public expenditure, there will always a good aggregate demand in the economy, and that demand is going to push the economy. That demand is always going to push the economy, so that there will be increase production, employment, income, consumption, savings, each and everything. So since then, in 1940s, government started borrowing basically for this purpose. This purpose, which purpose? The main purpose become what? We will borrow to invest, and whatever the money will come in the form of return, right, we will first repay that loan, and later on, once the principal amount and interest amount is paid, we will use that money for other kind of expenditure, like we will use that money for health, education, other things. Okay, so fiscal surplus is not budget surplus, will be the best in the case of the economic boom for slowdown. Don't go with the surplus fiscal and other kind of the jargons. Just step by step. I will come to the fiscal surplus also. Just step by step. Go with the step by step. Right. So this is the most prominent case where government do borrow. Right? Where government do borrow. Fine. So generally, government is going to borrow only 100. Government going to borrow only 100. Even if government want, they can borrow 120, and they can make it their budget as a balanced budget. But deliberately, government is borrowing only 100 rather than borrowing 120. Why? If government can borrow even 120 also to make their budget what? Balanced budget. But government is borrowing only 100. Why? Because when government is borrowing 100, then your revenue total receipts is going to be 180, right? It is going to be 180, sorry, 380, and it is how much? 400. Okay. So rather, if government will borrow 120, right, then government cannot put their efforts to decrease unnecessary expenditure. Government will not put their effort to decrease unnecessary expenditure, because your budget is already in what? Your budget is already is balanced. But if my budget is having some deficit of 20, if my budget is having some deficit of 20, then what I will do? I can do one thing, either I can borrow 20 extra and make it zero. One option. Another option is, what I will try during the financial year, I will try to increase this, I will try to increase this, right? I will try to increase this, I will try to increase this, and I will try to decrease any unnecessary expenditure here. any unnecessary expenditure here. If some money is going to be spent in nonsense thing, we will try to reduce it. So the philosophy is what? Philosophy is borrow what is required. Borrow what is required and you can pay it easily. Right? Borrow whatever is required and you can pay it easily. Do not make you so much comfortable, because getting the borrowings is comforting, but repaying the borrowing is a difficult thing. So we will borrow 100 and we will try to reduce our unnecessary expenditure, if any unnecessary expenditure here in the revenue expenditure. At the same time, we will also try to increase our tax receipts and non-tax receipts. Tax receipts and non-tax receipts, so that we can increase it to 380 to 400. 380 to 400, right? So in that way, we are going to have some deficit in our budget. That's why every year government will show some deficit in their budget deficit. Though if government want, they can make it zero. Government, if want, they can make it zero while presenting the budget, and it is very easy by increasing the borrowing. But government is not going to increase borrowing in order to make it zero. Government is borrowing what is required for developing the infrastructure in the country, as well as where we need to fulfill our revenue expenses like health, education, which are necessary, and we do not have the money, right? So this is the philosophy of having budget deficit. Is it clear? Why do governments have deficit in their budget deficit? Why government show the budget deficit? Government shows the budget deficit. I am repeating again. Government shows the budget deficit by not exactly going to borrow the entire amount. Government will borrow that some less amount, so that government can push itself to increase their tax receipts and non-tax receipts, plus reduce any unnecessary revenue expenditure, and at the end of financial year it will be zero. Got it? Clear this point? Is it clear? Okay, so all those people who have given answer A, economic boom, right? All those people who have given answer A, if economic boom like situation is already in economy, government is not going to borrow 100, government is going to borrow only 80, because government know that we have economic boom and maybe tax receipts and non-tax receipts is going to increase here. So what government is expecting, our revenue receipts 200. Government will think we can even have 220. So there is no need to borrow 100, just go and borrow 80. So if in the economy is in the takeoff stage, or if economy is in the economic boom stage, government will reduce their borrowings, because more tax receipts are going to come from there. But still government is going to have some deficit there, right? Deficit, or even sometimes it can be what? It can be balanced. Okay, so these two situations means economic boom like situation, or takeoff stage like situation. Government will not go for the surplus, but government will try to go for decrease in their borrowings. Okay, government will try to decrease their borrowings, so that more and more money can be collected through what? More and more money can be collected in the form of revenue receipts. Now, if a country is facing war like situation, or country is in a war, right? If country is in a war, then whenever war will come, it is always said by the economists, war is a mother of all demand, right? War is a mother of all demand. And if war will be there, how much money do you need in this financial year? How much money do you need in this year? You don't know exactly. So if such kind of natural calamity is there, or something like war which is going to be happen for next few years, you do not know that. So in between the war, you cannot stop the war because I have, my money is over, we need to start the process again, borrow again, then we will fight the war. It's not like that. So that is why during the war time, generally government do present their surplus budget, right? In 1960s, when the severe drought was hit in India, then government has presented the surplus budget, right? So that we have extra money, and that extra money we can spend wherever it is required. So this is why generally government will present the surplus budget only in the exceptional case, right? So surplus budget is presented only when there is an exceptional case. Otherwise, government always try to reduce the borrowings, right? Government always try to reduce their borrowings. Now it is clear or not? Is this point is clear? Divyanshu? Okay, good. So now you can understand how borrowings are होता था ना, means during board exams and other exam, VVVVI, very 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 important, right? Very 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 important. So similarly for government, borrowings are also very 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 important, right? They are very important. Fine. So if the borrowings are very important, right? So rather than just relying on this budget deficit, what, because budget deficit is telling is what, total expenditure minus total receipts. So because I told you how this borrowings are very important, so we want to know exactly what impact will be on budget if there will be no borrowings. We want to know if there will be no borrowings, how our budget will be look like, right? So that is why total expenditure minus total receipts, and we will decrease the B from here. From total receipts, we will decrease B. If we will decrease B from here, we will get the deficit like this: total expenditure minus total receipts, and open the bracket, it will be plus B. And what is TE minus TR? That is budget deficit plus borrowing, and we will call it as a fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit. So if we are going to use our this calculation, what we have mentioned here, how was our total expenditure? Total expenditure was 400, total receipts was 380, and how much we have borrowed? We have borrowed, finally this amount was our borrowing. This is the amount we have borrowed. So budget deficit was of 20 plus borrowing is of 100. So our fiscal deficit is how much? 120. Acha. Now budget deficit versus fiscal deficit. When we say budget deficit, in budget deficit, we just simply minus total expenditure minus total receipts, right? And here total receipts are comprised of capital receipts plus revenue receipts. Here total expenditure is comprised of capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure, right? And when we mention the capital receipts, it is also inclusive of borrowings. So what we are doing when we have to find out fiscal deficit, what we will do simply, what is our budget deficit minus what? Sorry, plus borrowings. Budget deficit plus borrowings. Clear this point? Fiscal deficit, what is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is clear? Yes, fiscal deficit is a big picture. Fiscal deficit is showing that how you are capable of, right? So the target is what? Target is to decrease the borrowing, which is only for the purpose of what? If you want to create an more income generation things, infrastructure kind of a thing, only then go for the borrowings, right? If you are borrowing for fulfilling basic requirements like health, education, social sector, then it is bad. So that is why the fiscal deficit is very important, because it is comprised of what? Comprised of borrowing. Whereas in budget deficit, what you can simply do? Budget deficit is TE minus TR. And in this TE minus TR, what you have to do? Just increase the borrowing, it is going to be zero. Just increase the borrowing, and your budget deficit will be zero. So budget deficit is not showing the clear picture, right? In India, till then 1990, 1991, in the budget statement, there was no mention of this fiscal deficit. There was no mention of fiscal deficit, right, properly. When we are under severe financial crisis and we went to IMF said that fine, we will provide you the funding, but there are some structural functional problem in Indian economy, right? There are structural functional problems in the Indian economy, and government of India must address those structural and functional problem. And they have mentioned that when government of India do present the budget to the people of India via parliament, government do present the budget via parliament to the people of India. So you are not telling the exact picture of your finances to the public of India. You are just saying that we have deficit only 20, we will easily cover up this 20. But the big picture is what? It is not 20, it is 120. You are not telling this figure to the public of India, right? If you will present this picture, you will be under pressure. Public is going to criticize you, and when public pressure will be there, then you will try to work more efficiently, right? Then you are going to work more efficiently. If mom is asking how your study is going on, then maybe you can take this question lightly. But if dad is going to ask this question, then you can understand the severity, right? So it's something like you must have to present the actual picture. So under the agreement between government of India and RBI and IMF, it was decided that from now government will also present the fiscal deficit data in the budgeting process, right? So from then the fiscal deficit targets data is being presented on regular basis. Got the importance of fiscal deficit, right? So see, even even from 1990s, 1991, 1992, when Dr. MMS Manmohan Singh has presented the budget, he was the first finance minister who presented the fiscal deficit data properly, right? However, from 1992 onwards till then, year 2000, right? Till then, year 2000, this was a phase of Indian economy. This was a phase of Indian economy where Indian economy was in a high growth rate phase, right? Indian economy was in high growth rate phase. Okay. So what we have decided, fiscal deficit. And I told you fiscal deficit is comprised of what? Budget deficit plus borrowings, right? Budget deficit plus borrowings. And when I was telling you about borrowings, I told you there are the two reasons for borrowing. There are the two reasons for borrowing. One reason, I had certain necessary needs which I am not able to fulfill. I have certain needs which I am not able to fulfill. That is why I want to borrow. Second is, I am going to borrow because I will invest that money, right? I will invest that money where at some certain place so that my source of income is going to increase, right? My source of income is going to increase. So if you will see from 1990, if you will see from even 1992 to year 2000, if you will see the data here, so this is our total borrowings, right? This is our total borrowing. Suppose that from 1991 to 1992, right? Our borrowings is like this, right? So out of this total borrowing, suppose that this part of the borrowing I am considering A, and this part of the borrowing I am considering B. So the borrowing part A is for fulfilling our certain needs, and borrowing part B is for putting that money in the form of investments. Okay. Yes, PV Narasimha Rao was a prime minister. So this is my borrowing in 1991 and in 1992 financial year. So A is comprised of this part and B is comprised of this part, right? A is comprised of this part, B is comprised of this part. So this is like something 68% and it is like 32%. So only 32% we are borrowing for the purpose of what? Investment, right? And 68% we was borrowing for the purpose of fulfilling our basic requirements. Gradually, when we came to this financial year, year 2001 to 2002, 2001 to 2002, our borrowings were increased. But it is like for B, we are borrowing around 48% and it is like 52%. Right? We are borrowing 52% for A, that is our basic needs, whereas 48% we are borrowing for further investments in the economy. Okay. So during this phase, what we have seen that our investment related borrowings is gradually what? Increasing. investment related borrowings, B. Whereas our requirements related, basic needs related borrowings are gradually what? Decreasing. Right? So our investment related borrowings are increasing, and our basic necessity needs related borrowings are decreasing. Right? So from here, first take is what? First take is there must be a borrowing, but that is in the form of A or B. We must have the borrowings, but that borrowing should be in the form of A or B. Tell me. A is our basic needs related borrowings. B is kind of borrowing which is related to what? B is a kind of borrowing which is for the investment purpose. B. B related borrowing must be there. So there must be borrowings. But that borrowing should be limited to what? That borrowing should be limited to B for investment purpose. Okay. So can we say that there will be always a fiscal deficit in budget? There will be always a fiscal deficit in budget, but that fiscal deficit is in terms of borrowings, and borrowing for the purpose of what? Investments. So that is why the fiscal deficit Thanos, he said that na, inevitable. So it will be what? Inevitable. You cannot ignore me. Fine. So fiscal deficit will be there. Fiscal deficit will be there. Okay. So there will be the fiscal deficit, but we have to make it sure that that fiscal deficit is only, because fiscal deficit is directly depicting what? Borrowing, and that borrowing should be only for investment purpose. Right? So that is why it is said that if your fiscal deficit is if your fiscal deficit is 3% of your GDP. If your fiscal deficit is of 3% of your GDP, then you are a Raja Beta. Right? Means government is doing the good work. Means this is the good work, because government is just borrowing only for the purpose of what? Government is only borrowing for the purpose of investment. So we have to make sure that our fiscal deficit should be around 3% of our GDP. Right. So this was widely discussed during the year 2000 to 2003. 2002, sir, but we will have to pay back loans. Obviously, you have to pay back the loans. Suppose that if you are going to borrow 10 lakhs, okay, obviously if you are borrowing 10 lakhs, or suppose that if you are borrowing 5 lakhs, right? If you are borrowing 5 lakh for 5 years, and after 5 years you are going to repay principal plus interest, principal amount plus interest amount, right? So you are borrowing 5 lakh and you have calculated In 5 years, I have to pay total how much? I have to pay total, suppose that 7.2 lakhs. You are going to borrow 5 lakh, and within a 5 year, you are going to return total 7.2 lakhs. So that is why you step back, because 5 lakh plus 2.2 lakh I have to pay. You step back. You didn't went for that loan. Other person, he said that okay, I will borrow this money. I will borrow this money, and I will make sure that anyhow by this 5 year I am going to earn at least, I'm going to borrow this money, and I will put this money in the form of investment, right? I will put this money in the form of what? I will put this money in the form of investment, and through that investment, when I will calculate by the end of 5 year, I am going to make 8 lakh. I am going to make 8 lakh in 5 years. So if you are able to make 8 lakh in next 5 year by this 5 lakh rupees investment, then obviously you are going to pay your complete loan, plus at the 5th year you will be in the surplus of 80,000. And this money again you can do what? Invest somewhere. So logic is this: we will borrow, invest, and once you will invest, you will start getting some income. With that income, repay the earlier loan. Start paying your loans. Once your loan is completely repaid, right? Once your loan is completely repaid, you can use that money for the further investments. This is the difference between common man and Ambani, right? Common man and Ambani, this is the difference, right? So they think that whatever the money I am going to get, I am going to use that money to generate the income and wealth. So that's why it's a risk. There is a risk. So you have to take the risk, but not like a fool. Take a risk with a systematic strategy, right? And that's why the people do take the loans. Okay. Fine. So by year 2002, 2003, government has set up a committee, and committee recommended that 3% fiscal deficit is a good situation for the economy. So that is why government has passed a kind of law in the parliament which is known as Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, FRBM Act 2003. So FRBM Act, which is known as Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act 2003. So it is Act. Act means what? Law. And you have made this law. You have made this law to decrease your fiscal deficit 3%. Government made this law in 2003. Government made this law in 2003. We will reduce our fiscal deficit to 3% by 2008-9. Government has set this goal by 2008-9. We will reduce our fiscal deficit, which was around 5.8% in 2003. Government has decided that we will reduce our fiscal deficit by 2008-9 to 3%. Systematically, we are going to reduce our fiscal deficit, right? So this target was set by the government of India. So when we are approaching in this financial year, means when government was supposed to present a budget for this financial year, it was estimated that our fiscal deficit is going to be around 4.8%, which is still higher 1.8% from our target. Government has announced, not announced, government has made a law that we will make the fiscal deficit to 3%, and your fiscal deficit is showing how much? 4.8%. So people will sue you in the court. कि government is lying. Government said that we are going to reduce it to 3% by 2008-9. But by the 2008-9, when you are presenting the budget, it was 4.8%. So you will be sued in the court by the people because you have made a law and you are violating the law which made by you. So that was a kind of situation. So government said, fine, no issue. We are going to amend this FRBM Act 2003. Government made the amendment and said that this 3% target is going to be fulfilled by 2011-12, not by 2008-9. So government has changed the goalpost, means target was to reach 3% by 8-9, but government has extended the target to 11-12. Right. So in this way, government has shift the goalpost. So a lot of things is happening in the FRBM. But I hope what was the central focus of today's discussion was fiscal deficit and why fiscal deficit is required. What is fiscal deficit? What is budget deficit? I hope these points are clear. Is it clear? Only one person. Only one person is saying it is clear. Where are the rest of the others? I'm able to see 13 people in the live chat, but I have received answer for only from 4 people. Where are the rest of the others? Because this topic is little bit complicated, and I always feel that this topic should be taught in the offline class setup, but not possible in the offline kind of the thing. So that's why I just want to know from you. If you are not clear, then please let me know. I'll try to make further effort. Thank you, Shreya. If you have any issue related whatever I taught you, if you have any issue, let me know right in this session or come to that chat session, means in our Telegram channel. Let me know. I will try to explain if it is upcoming topic, or I will try to post a video. Right? I will make a video and I will share that video with you so that I can explain. And one more announcement is from Monday onwards, I will take the class from 8 to 9:30. Right, because SEBI specific topics are almost over. One class is left. Probably I will take tomorrow that class. And from Monday onwards, we will shift our class timing from 9 to 10 to it is going to be like 8 to 9:30, means class is going to be extended from 1 hour to 1.5 hours from Monday onwards. Oh, you are having a master degree in economics. Great. Yes. PDF will be provided. Without PDF, it is going to be very difficult. PDF definitely will. I will provide the PDF. Thank you, Shreya, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. My educational background, I'll tell you, you are going to say I'm lying. My educational background is just BSc. And BSc in physics, chemistry, maths. Right? So these are my subjects in my graduation. I went means people force me even go for this master degree. Master degree. So what happened means for me master degree means what? Nobody should go by my degree. Everybody should go by my knowledge. Right? Because whenever I'll say someone, right, ki I'm a teacher of economics, right, so everyone want to know what is my degree in the economics. I do not have any degree in the economics. But yes, before starting, I've started teaching for means when in 2012-13 when I started teaching for SSC. In 2012-13 I have started teaching for SSC, right? And even for before that I have completed first, second, and third year books of Delhi University of Economics. So I'm a kind of person, if I am going to do something, so before that I will complete the entire background. I will do the all kind of the research, whatever is required. I will do it, only then I will deliver. Before that, I am not going to deliver. And for that, whatever is required, I am ready to sacrifice. Either I'm not going to say yes, I will do this thing, but if I'm going to say that yes, I will do that thing, then I'll do the entire research, complete thing, then I will deliver. Because what I personally feel that teaching is an art, right? Teaching is an art, and for that art, it is not like you should be a proper degree person. I have seen certain people. I have seen certain people. Many times I went for the various coaching institute. Being as a teacher, whenever I'll get the time, I'll go to the coaching institute. I'll request them कि I need a demo. I need a demo and I need a demo of economics. I'll go there and I'll see how they are teaching. How they are teaching. Because I always feel that maybe I can learn from them also. Right. So I have seen that if you are from the economics background itself. So a lot of things you are going to presume. Presume. अरे ये तो आता ही होगा, right? Like that. ये तो आता ही होगा, ये तो पता ही होगा. But when you are from non-background and you learn through your own, then you exactly know that कि where people can choke, where their understanding is going to be out of the blue. Then you can focus on those points, those weak points. Ki these are the weak points, and from here you can build the confidence among the student, right? So that helped me a lot. So those who have any kind of what sometimes you have feeling low. Ki economics is a kind of typical subject. How I can do that thing? If I can teach, and the way I teach is, I'm not means appreciating myself, but I know that I have certain level, right? I have certain level to make you understand, right? So if I can do it, why you not? Okay. So, okay, thank you everybody. We will join tomorrow at same time, 9. But from Monday onwards, we will start at 8. When we will be report and indices section. Reports and indices that will be covered probably at the end, means when we are going to finish, because all basic concepts will be clear, then reports and indices is going to be a little bit easier. Okay, thank you.